Take it in, people. Enjoy it. We're here. The Stanley Cup final. People thought the Canadiens would not be here, but we are here, and so is the Hockey Inside Out show. We're here in the Stanley Cup final. I don't mind looking like an idiot for thinking this team would have been out in the first round, as I know pretty much everyone else did too.
Not me.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. You're right. Jessica Rusnak is right. She's always right. She's right. Now, with that, let's before I embarrass myself further, let's go to Hockey Inside Out. Start the show. Welcome to the Stanley Cup Final edition of Hockey Inside Out. I am your host, Julian McKenzie, alongside the usual suspects who have been along for the ride from the beginning. Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette, Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak Montreal, Rick Green, former Stanley Cup champion of the Montreal Canadiens in 1986, former assistant coach, former number one overall pick. And we're here. The Stanley Cup Final. A game in. We know the Canadiens lost that game to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Imagine that, the Canadiens and the Lightning in a Stanley Cup Final series against each other. That's still a little weird, but we're here. The Canadiens losing that game one by a score of 5-1. We all know about how big and fast and strong that Lightning team is. But if the Canadiens have shown us anything throughout the playoffs, you just cannot underestimate them, even if it looks as if they're up against the team that on paper looks to be better in so many other ways. So the first question I have for you all, do the Montreal Canadiens have a realistic chance at beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup Final?
They certainly do. You go back to game one of the semifinal series against Vegas, they lost 4-1. They were outplayed, and people were probably thinking there's no way this team can beat Vegas. Well, they did. Go back to the first round series against Toronto when they were down 3-1. Lost game four, I believe it was 4-0. It looked like they were just going to roll over and die, and they didn't. They came back and won that series too. So this team has shown a lot of resiliency during the season. They've shown an ability to make adjustments. They're going to have to make some adjustments before game two. The first three Tampa goals were all sort of similar, all coming off of turnovers at or near the offensive blue line. Passes you just can't make when Tampa has their top two lines out on the ice. Luke Richardson spoke about it after the game. I'm sure they'll watch a video and they'll clear that up a little bit. But they're only down 2-1 going into the third period. They were still into the game, even though they had been outplayed. But with Carey Price, you always have a chance. And they've proven in the past, as I said, that they can come back and bounce back. You go back the last three times the Canadiens won the Stanley Cup, they lost the first game in every one of those series. So there's a positive for Canadiens fans who are looking for something to grasp onto. But yeah, they have a chance to come back in this series. It's only one game, and it's a 7-game series.
Yeah, I agree with Stu. I mean, it's one game. They're looking for a split on the road here, and obviously some of the problem areas were in the turnovers, and they have to respect the speed of the Tampa Bay group because I think what impressed me the most is their transition game. Once they turn that puck over, that puck is going up ice. So they have to be really careful about some of the areas that give them trouble, the other night, and that's at the blue line and inside their blue line. And they got to make sure that that puck is going ahead because Tampa is turning over and coming at you. And Tampa being a very experienced group, they have been there before. You can see it in their play. But I have to caution, some of the Canadian players to be careful they don't get too concerned about getting into those scrums after whistles and being distracted from, what their game plan is. And that type of stuff in a final doesn't go a long way. There's other parts and details of the game that I think they need to address. And if they're going to be quite aware of what they need to do game two. And I'm confident that it's going to be a different team out there starting the next match.
Yeah, it's definitely glass half full for the Montreal Canadiens, and they've shown throughout the playoff series that they might not have the best start, but they'll find a way to adjust their game and have their opponent playing their style of game. And as Stu mentioned, that first game against Vegas, it was very similar to this, that everyone said, wow, the Canadiens are now finally facing a real NHL team. They're in a league of their own. It's going to be completely different from the first two rounds. And then they showed they're able to make the adjustments and be able to come back in that series and obviously eventually win it. So I believe that's what the Montreal Canadiens are going to be able to do, find a way to have the Tampa Bay Lightning play their game. rather than them playing the Tampa Bay Lightning's game. And I kind of like the mindset of the team going into this series. Tyler Toffoli and many other players kept saying, we deserve to be here. Almost that storyline that the Canadiens just lucked out to be there and Tampa Bay is the only actual team that deserves to be there. They said, no, that's not the case. We have played well and we belong here and we're going to fight for the Stanley Cup and don't count us out just yet.
Yeah, as Josh Anderson said after the game, we're in a good spot. We're in the finals. There's 29 other teams that would love to be where the Canadiens are right now, down 1-0 in a Stanley Cup final. Lightning coach John Cooper did a really good job in game one, having the last line change. He had his top line with Kucherov out there against the Suzuki line with Caulfield and Toffoli. The Suzuki line was -3. So that's something, after the game, Luke Richardson talked about nerves and how some of the young guys might have been a little bit nervous, which is natural on the big stage, Stanley Cup final, first time. So that's another thing, the nerves should be a little bit better for game two. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure Luke Richardson will be, and the coaching staff will be doing video work showing out the mistakes that were made on those 3 turnovers that resulted in goals. And again, they were only down 2-1 going into the third period. They weren't blown out as bad as what the score might show. So yeah, we'll see if they bounce back in game two. And there's a saying that you're never in trouble in a series until you lose a game on home ice. So even if the Canadiens lose game two, they come back home. It'd obviously be great if they can steal one game of the first 2. That's what you always want to do in a playoff series. But even if they lose game 2, you're not really in trouble until you lose a game at home.
And talk about matchups. It'd be nice on the defensive side if you didn't have to see Sheridan and Weber out against their fourth line, wasting a lot of energy trying to pound away at their fourth line. Save it for some of the better lines with Tampa. But it's easier said than done. But I'm quite sure that there's going to be lots of conversation had as far as how do we need to be better game 2, and they'll be ready to go.
I think we're delving into the next question I wanted to ask, which is what adjustments the Canadiens actually have to make in order to get a win in game 2. And I think, as I mentioned before, we've kind of alluded to some of the adjustments they have to make in terms of limiting the turnovers that they've had in the offensive zone and the neutral zone. But I'm also curious with the fact that John Cooper, at least in game 2, will have that last line change, and he's been able to exploit that Toffoli, Suzuki, Caulfield line. -3, as you had mentioned before, 3 goals allowed in that game 1. So the Canadiens, I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do with that. I'm curious what you guys might have to say about that. And also just the nerves. I did feel that the Canadiens actually had some nerves to start off in that first period. One thing I'll mention about that game 1 loss to Vegas, the Canadiens, at least in that game, they started off really well. They had a lot of high danger chances. I think they led that battle like 7-1 after 20 minutes. And then the Vegas Golden Knights took over in that game. I didn't feel for a moment in game 1, at least, that the Canadiens had a whole period where they really kind of took it to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I'm with you guys. It's just one game. So what do you guys think in terms of adjustments the Canadiens will need to do in order to get a win in game 2 or later on in this series?
Well, I think one thing for sure is they have to respect the power play of Tampa, because in watching the way they move that puck around through seams and the way that they can launch pucks from either side, obviously very, very, dangerous. But, the other point is Tampa Bay's defense are involved in every rush. It's no longer 3-on-2s. There's always a fourth guy jumping in there. So the Canadiens are going to have to come back very hard. It's not, we talked about their third man being high. Well, it's almost like their fourth guy's got to be coming back as fast as what he went on the offense, because they are really, really active in all areas of the offense, Tampa's defense. So you have to be aware, and you got to come back hard, because they impressed me a lot with how they felt confident in jumping in there offensively, and they created a lot of problems for the Canadiens.
Yeah, turnovers is a must. They have to limit the amount of those, but also keeping their emotions in check, not just the nerves of being at the Stanley Cup final. For a lot of these players, it's the first time, they're young and having this unbelievable run, but also not get too frustrated and not get into it with the Tampa Bay Lightning players. Just try and keep your cool. They know they're getting under your skin. We saw that the previous round with Vegas, like the Canadiens were able to get under Vegas's skin and take advantage of that. But this time around, they don't want to have that happen. Try and stay cool as much as possible and the focus on the game.
Yeah, they need to clean up those turnovers, as we mentioned earlier, at the offensive blue line. They need to know who's on the ice. They need to be aware when that Kucherov line's on or when Stamkos line is on. And in those situations, you just got to get the puck in deep behind the defense and get it in their zone, not give them the opportunity to have the turnaround like they did for those first 3 goals last night. Also on defense, Luke Richardson has described his top 4 as the 4 Clydesdales, which is a really good description. But there was a one shift last night where Petrie and Edmondson were stuck on the ice for over 2 minutes. So I think that it's just going to be a case of they're going to get worn down. I think as they play against a team like Tampa with the offensive power they have, and they obviously don't trust Merrill or Gustafsson to play them regularly out there. They're getting limited minutes, so you wonder why they wouldn't put Kulak and Romanov back together as their third pairing. They played well together during the regular season, and I think it's a physical series. Those are 2 physical guys, and I don't understand why they just keep dressing Merrill and Gustafsson when they obviously don't trust them to play them regularly. So maybe put in those other 2 guys, and they don't need to play every third shift, but maybe like every 6th shift through that, just to give the top 4 guys a break. Because I think if this series does go long, the 4 Clydesdales are going to wear down, and it might not go long if they get worn down too quickly.
I agree with you, Stu. I mean, listen, Romanov would be able to handle it. Kulak could handle it also. And if you don't have confidence in throwing those other guys out there, it's going to be a tough grind for those, top 4. So they're going to need some help, and they're going to have to find a way to insert maybe one of those guys that's going to give a little bit of a break, and also, trust that they're going to do the job for them. So I don't know if that's in their conversation, but I would definitely, like to see them entertain the thought of it.
I think we've had rant. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I understand why they want to ride those top 4 defensemen, because they've been really, really good. But I think, they've been averaging over 23 minutes a game each right from the start of the playoffs. And it's been a long grind. I mean, Rick, you would know, you've been there. It's been a long grind. And it looked last night, there was a few shifts where they looked like they were out of gas and they just couldn't get the puck out of their own end. So either play Gustafsson and Merrill more, but I don't think they trust them enough to play them more. I know Gustafsson's there because he's a power play specialist, but there's not that many power plays in the playoffs. So I think you weigh the pros and cons of it. I just don't understand Gustafsson. I don't think having him there in the power play is important enough for the downside of it, of having those top 4 guys just get worn out.
I think we've had rants on this show longer than what Eric Gustafsson played on Monday night. Seriously. I don't get why that, what's the point of having him play 4 or 5 minutes in a night when you could have Alexander Romanov or someone else play those minutes? I still think Alexander Romanov should see more time in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Why not have him out there being physical, using his quickness out there on the ice? I don't know if it's just they don't trust him to do more of the hard work defensively, or if he's just a young player. I'm not quite sure, but it would be nice to see him get more time in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Especially since all the other young guys have really stepped up in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Caulfield was a healthy scratch the first 2 games, which I've still scratched my head about that. Kotkaniemi was a healthy scratch the first game. But they've all come up and they've played well. So I wonder why they don't have the same belief in Romanov, and especially since he was already there in the playoff bubble last year, supposedly to gain experience, even though he couldn't play. And the Canadiens were hoping the NHL would change the rules a bit so he could play. And he went through that whole experience, and now, for whatever reason, they don't trust him in the playoffs. And it's not like he played terrible during the regular season either.
And it's not as if they have to put him in there, on a regular shift. He's there to help out when needed, and he's not going to hurt you. I like yourself, I don't totally understand it, but that's.
And I think the worst part is that we haven't even been given a proper explanation as to why. So that's the other thing too. If they came out and gave something that made sense, then everyone would get it. But it seems like they can't even make sense of the situation.
And they won't put Merrill and Gustafsson out together. I mean, they slot them in with the other guys. And I think with Kulak and Romanov, you could put them out there together. They showed during the regular season they played well together as a third pairing.
I don't know about you guys, but Marc Bergevin hasn't looked this happy in a very, very long time. And obviously it has to do with the fact that the Canadiens are in the Stanley Cup final. But the suit, the red suit, you all know what I'm talking about here. Does it have some kind of magic power? Because it seems as if good things happen when he wears this fancy, magical, red-colored suit. I think he wore another color at a different point, but everyone seems to focus on that same damn red suit. It seems to be working. How much of a factor has luck, maybe the suit, or maybe just, ghosts from the Montreal Forum? How big of a factor has luck been with the Montreal Canadiens during their Stanley Cup run?
Well, there's been a lot of outside influence, I would have to say, going back to that Uber Eats commercial with Patrick Waugh and Mario Tremblay reuniting, breaking the curse of St. Patrick. Then you also have the lucky red suit. Some people celebrate Christmas in July. It looks like something Santa Claus would wear in July when he's lost a little bit of weight. And of course, Philip Deneau eating his pizza. Things have been working well for this team. But, in all seriousness, yes, they have got some luck. If you look at the Vegas series when Marc-Andre Fleury misplayed the puck, there's other times that they've got some bounces. But for the most part, the Canadiens have been playing well, that it's not a situation like in the first round of the playoffs early on against Toronto, where it was Carey Price carrying this team on his back, stealing games for them. Other players have been able to step up and contribute. And you look at this team and you say, wow, this team is playing well. They've really been able to step up their game and improve and show that they could play with some of the top teams in the league. So I think it's a mixture of luck and also players elevating their skills and showing that they're taking advantage of the opportunity that they're in.
Well, the lucky suit has definitely worked for all three clinching games in the first three series. I've been critical of Marc Bergevin in the past, and he's given reason to be critical of him. But as I wrote in a column after the Vegas, I was happy for Marc Bergevin after that game. I can't imagine the stress that he's gone through, the sleepless nights, some of the tough decisions he had to make this year. I'm sure it wasn't easy to fire Claude Julien and Kirk Muller, two really good guys. I'm sure it wasn't easy to fire Stéphane Waite in the middle of a game. But Marc Bergevin has believed right from the beginning of the season that he built a team that could win in the playoffs, and they're proving him right now. So I was really happy for him. He's aged in front of our eyes in the last 9 years.
Yes.
It's sort of like watching Obama when he was president, just aging as he went along. You can't imagine the stress that he's had, that crazy hair he's got right now, the lucky red suit. But luck, I don't think there's ever been a team who's won the Stanley Cup who didn't have luck. It takes luck. Patrick Waugh talking to his goalposts, winning 10 straight games in overtime. No team's ever won the Stanley Cup without some luck and without fantastic goaltending. I'm sure it was the same with Rick when he won the Stanley Cup. I'm sure there was moments where you went, how did that happen? Like, is it Forum ghosts? The giveaway by Mark Fleury in that game against Vegas, when Vegas had the game in hand and maybe the series in hand, and all of a sudden he goes behind the net, makes a mess of it. Luck, ghost, luck, whatever. So lucky breaks, but you have to take advantage of them. And if the Canadiens do get to a deciding game in the Stanley Cup final, I'm sure Marc Bergevin is going to pull out that red suit, and good for him. Not too many guys over 50 years old can wear a red suit and pull it off. So kudos to Marc Bergevin for that.
Superstitions and luck, they go hand in hand, And I look back in 86 and with Serge Savard, always had to have our team meal at his buddy's restaurant. Always same time, same place. We always had to have the same bus driver. And the bus driver, one day we were heading out, I forget what series it was. Our regular bus driver didn't show up. And everybody panicked and said, well, we're not leaving till our regular bus driver comes. So they called him, and it was his day off, and they brought him in so that he could drive the bus. So if you want to talk about some wacky things that play into series and superstition and luck, it's there, and then on the controllable stuff or uncontrollable with bounces during the games. And again, we talked about Patrick. I mean, there was stuff that was going on sometimes during the game that I'm sure that, we never saw where the puck was going. Patrick never saw it, but it would hit him in the back of the head or it would hit him in the back of the leg. It went to a favorable spot versus, being able to pick up the rebound. All these little things start to come into the picture, and you have to have some breaks. You have to have a little bit of luck. Canadiens, to get this far, they've had their fair share of breaks. I hope it continues because it plants a little seed in the opposition when things start bouncing every time in your favor, and there's doubt in the opposition's mind that you're not going to beat them.
Rick, did you have any superstitions?
Just basically our routine for going out to the ice kept consistent. That even if there's a guy getting his skate sharpened, nobody went in front or behind. Then we did our little ritual of, just before the game would start, we'd end up skating around, and I would end up bumping into Robinson, who'd always be standing by the net, just standing there waiting for the shoulder check before that was the official kickoff for, okay, let's go play. But, anything wacky and weird, we left it all up to the goalie.
Okay, Larry Robinson's a big dude. I understand why you end up bumping into him. Let's go on to our final question of this show. This is actually the first time we get to basically talk about the ending of the Vegas Golden Knights series, which ended with a spectacular conclusion, an overtime winning goal from Arturi Lehkonen, and people will never forget June 24th, 2021 for the rest of their lives as far as I'm concerned. Do you have any final takeaways from that third round series between the Canadiens and the Golden Knights?
I think it sort of goes back a little bit to our first question, just that don't give up on this Canadiens team. They're able to fight back. People thought they were out after that first game against Vegas. They picked up their game. They played really well. Danault line through the first three series were able to shut down the other team's top line almost totally. One of the differences now against Tampa is you have two number one lines on Tampa. That's going to make the job a lot more difficult. But it just showed, I think against the Vegas series, it showed that what happened against Toronto and Winnipeg wasn't a fluke. We're talking about luck. Like people might have said, no, they were lucky to beat Toronto. And they were. They were outshot 13-2 in one of those overtime games that they won. If Nick Suzuki doesn't score in Game 5, the season's over there, and we're talking a different story. So I think they showed that they were a really good team and that they can compete against one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NHL. Colorado and Vegas tied for the most points during the regular season. And the Canadiens won the series in 6 games and showed that they could compete against an elite team in the NHL. And Tampa's an elite team also. And although they didn't compete that well in Game 1, it'll be interesting to see how they play going forward. So, yeah, I think the Canadiens in that series, my takeaway is that they proved that they are indeed a legitimate Stanley Cup team and they deserve to be where they are.
And they executed their game plan perfectly each and every game. I mean, they plugged up. What impressed me the most, they gave no room in the neutral zone. They made it really hard for any of the Vegas guys to penetrate there under control. Ended up forcing them to dump the puck in. And then on the other side, on the forechecking side, they were so aggressive and attacked the defense with great desire to turn pucks over, and it worked for them. And I think that against Tampa, they're going to identify those areas that gave success before and try to bring that out against Tampa. But they'll have to consistently be really good at it, each and every line. And I'm quite sure that they're capable of bringing that consistent, disciplined game plan against Tampa.
And they played with such confidence as well, especially, if they were down in a game or if the game was going into overtime. There was never this sort of sense of panic that maybe you kind of saw a little bit more in Game 1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning, that they were able to find that confidence, and hopefully they can find it again in this series. And I think it's true what Marc Bergevin has said, that once you get into the playoffs, you never know what might happen. You look at the paper and how these two teams might match up, and on paper it doesn't make sense, but in real life somehow that's what ends up happening. And so for me, it's that the confidence the players have been able to gain, and also the way certain players have been able to step up their game as well, especially a guy like Arturi Lehkonen. We spoke about him during the regular season, not having the best regular season, but so far in this playoffs, he's really shown what he's able to bring.
You talk about the depth. That's what Marc Bergevin has talked about all season, the depth they have on this team, and they do have a lot of depth. And you were talking about adjustments earlier. Thomas Tatar is sort of a forgotten guy right now. And I'm wondering if it might be time to bring him back, put him back with Danault and Gallagher. And down on that fourth line. If Armia can't play, it looks like Armia will play. But I think with, Thomas Tatar has been the forgotten guy, and they're going to have to score goals against Tampa to beat them. And I'm wondering if it might be time to get Tatar back in the lineup to see what he can do. I don't know if they will do that. But the thing is that the depth that the Canadiens have, and as we spoke earlier, they have the depth with Kulak and Romanov available to come in on defense if they want. I don't know. I'd be surprised if Richardson makes some major changes for Game 2, but if they lose Game 2, I think they might have to make some changes when they come home for Game 3.
I know the series has already started. Is it too late to get predictions out of all of you? I say Canadiens in 7.
Yeah, I already wrote a column saying Canadiens in 7 because the Islanders were able to take Tampa to 7, and the Canadiens play a very, very similar style to the Islanders, and the $84 million man in net playing like the $84 million man, and the GM's lucky red suit. So if it goes to Game 7, the suit's going to pay off.
Well, for me, I haven't done well at all in any of my predictions. So what can I say? I have no clue other than to throw something out there that I feel Tampa has a real experienced group that have been there before, and I might figure on them doing a 6-game victory.
I've been saying Habs in 6 since the first round. I was finally right last round, so I'm going to go Habs in 6 again.
I get a chuckle when people abuse us for you're an idiot. Your predictions are wrong. If I could predict these things perfectly, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys. I'd be betting everything I have on every single game, and I'd be living on an island somewhere with my feet up, having a cold beer and watching the ocean waves crash in front of me. So, predictions. Look at the definition of predictions in the dictionary, and you'll find out exactly what they are. So nobody knows for sure what's going to happen.
Also, most of those people who will be quick to say, "Oh, you guys don't know anything," I'm pretty sure they didn't think the Canadiens would get this far either. I'm sure at different points of the year, they were calling, the Canadiens a joke. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one really knew. Well, actually, it's funny. Earlier on in the year, I said this was like the best Canadiens team I've lived to see. I should have actually trusted my gut at the beginning of the year. So it's actually kind of ironic. I feel that no one really should have seen this team coming, but I low-key kind of did. I just didn't trust myself.
We're talking about luck, though. I mean, when you look at the stats, and the top 4 scorers in the playoffs are all Lightning players. Their goalie's even been better than Carey Price. I mean, there's no real reason to pick the Canadiens when you just look on paper at what these teams are. But it comes down to what we were talking about before with luck and breaks. And Canadiens have had luck on their side. They've had fate on their side. And, you talk about teams of destiny. They've looked like a team of destiny up until this point. We'll see if that continues.
How quickly it changes. And, you look at the goals that Tampa scored, they were all from deflections, misdirects, just nothing real direct shot for goals. And that hopefully will change and go more in Canadiens' favor next game, because you need those bounces, obviously, as we've seen before, to go in your favor. And Canadiens before were able to get it. Hopefully they'll switch it around and they'll get a couple breaks, because it looks like the goals that are going to be scored are going to be those types. They're, aside from a few of those real highly skilled guys that can really let it rip like Kucherov, but there's going to just be probably a lot of goals that are, jams in front of the net, deflections, and we'll see what happens, from there.
Stay tuned for Game 2, where someone will get called for an illegal stick. That's going to do it for this week's edition for Hockey Inside Out, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for being on the show, obviously. And thank you for watching at home and tuning in. Visit hockeyinsideout.com to check out other full episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are above the 10,000 subscriber mark. We'd love to see a few more subscribers, of course. And if you have any questions you'd like to see us tackle in a future episode, let us know in the comments section below. Enjoy the final.